Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Creativity in Adversity, and that's a series of programs that we're doing focusing on the creative sector, on the creative economy, and on the lives of creatives at this time of the coronavirus. So we are very happy and very honored to be joined by our special guest today, and we have Emily Njeru, who's a Deputy Director of the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO, which is KNATCOM. Karibu sana, Emily.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, as Kingwa has introduced me, my name is Emily. I work for the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO. I'm a Deputy Director Arts. Yeah,
of arts, huh?
Yes.
Because it's different.
Culture program, yes, because UNESCO has 5 programs. That is education, sciences, culture, information and communication. 5 because we have natural science and social sciences. Yeah, and our main work is actually to promote UNESCO ideals in Kenya through those 5 areas for peace and sustainable development. So I'm in the culture program, and in the culture program we are in the forefront of fostering arts and creativity at national level by sharing UNESCO based practices. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you even took the time to give us a background of UNESCO and UNESCO's work, because UNESCO is a global organization.
Yes.
United Nations Education, Scientific
and Cultural Organization.
And so a lot of people maybe in Mashinani, in the rural areas, might not know about it. Even me, actually, I came to know about that UNESCO has a Kenya office, like just maybe 3 or something years ago. Has it always been there?
Yeah, the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO has always been in existence since 1964. It existed as a department under the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
That is after Kenya joined UNESCO. Kenya is a member state of UNESCO, and the charter for UNESCO requires the member states to establish national commissions. So we are a national commission for UNESCO.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a liaison office between UNESCO and Kenya. And we have a dual mandate of promoting Kenya at UNESCO and UNESCO interest in Kenya.
That's really good. Thank you so much, Emily. And I've known Emily for many, many years, like more than 10, right?
Yeah, it's a long time.
Because I think the first time we met was at the book fair.
Yes, in Sarit Center.
So that was so many years back. And so it's been very inspiring just watching you over all this time, because that time you were at the Ministry of Culture, and just really... So I just also want to recognize really that your continued persistence, determination, and commitment to this sector. So guys, just for future reference, keep in mind, Emily is a good friend of the creative sector, of the creative arts, and she's been doing a lot of initiatives, which we're going to hear more about. But for today, we want to find out what transpired from yesterday's global discussion, because UNESCO yesterday had a debate. It was a webinar, and it was talking about resilience in the cultural sector. It was called Resiliart. So Emily was part of that. She listened in, and there's a lot that was discussed on the global level that it would be good to be shared on the local level. So she was very kind to just very quickly say that this information needs to be shared out with our local creatives. So maybe you could just tell us something about what are the highlights and what are the things that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, yesterday the UNESCO headquarters in Paris launched a series of debate and a movement, a Resiliart movement. And the purpose of this launch is to initiate conversations about the arts, because arts and culture sector are facing a crisis at this time.
Yes.
Due to the COVID crisis, a lot of cultural spaces are closed. And then we're also finding that majority of artists can no longer create, they can't interact, they can't perform. They've lost their jobs. The spaces are closed. And then we also have vulnerable groups that like, when you look at the Maasai market, the women who go to trade every time, they can't do that because of social distancing. It means they can no longer create, they can't sell, they have no food to eat. And these conversations actually was to share what artists are going through with a view to influence governments and to influence policy, to tell artists to raise their voice. They need to say something so that future policies can factor such risks, and to see how do we move on as a sector during this crisis, how do we survive, how are artists creating. how do we better their working environment through policies. So UNESCO initiated this global debate yesterday that was very fruitful, and we had very good facilitators, and they called upon all countries that are member states of UNESCO from yesterday to start their local debates and to urge artists and creative professionals to join in the conversations. And I'm happy that you invited me today, because the debate was just yesterday. And I hope in Kenya we are going to have these debates, a lot of them, so that we can be able to bring artists together to raise their voice and to see how do we influence future policies. Because what we've realized, that the current policies are not very, very friendly to the status of the artists in terms of supporting them. In terms of cushioning them in case of crisis. We are grateful that our president has actually given a directive that Sports and Culture Fund put aside 100 million to support artists. That is a very good initiative, and I'm sure the Ministry of Culture is working on modalities on how to disperse these funds to artists.
All right, that's good. And I think one of the things what we'd been saying with Tim Owase was here yesterday, was the idea of how using a crisis as an opportunity. There's someone, I don't know if it was Winston Churchill, who said, never let a crisis go to waste. Because, like, for example, it actually brings out such issues that we as a country we never talk about, which is issues of welfare, issues of labor. The fact is that there are a group of people who, I mean, of course, the ideal is that we are all financially empowered and, you know, we have savings for 6 months to a year. But the fact is that not everyone is in that place. So it does give an opportunity for us to start thinking about moving forward. How can the government become like a site that then cushions the society, from artists to everyone else at such time. So I think it's really timely, and even the fact that we are now going to, because I think you mentioned that we are going to have a local, I don't know if it's going to be online, maybe you could tell us about how now that's going to look like, and what you're thinking of having in terms of for the movement in Kenya.
Yes, thank you. I cannot speak on behalf of government, because our work at UNESCO, at KNATCOM, is actually a liaison office between government and UNESCO, and we bring in a lot of stakeholders together, that is civil society, cultural sector, professionals, academia, and what we do, we bring them together so that we can be able to find solutions and to encourage dialogue, so that we find sustainable solutions to the challenges that face the sector. And in terms of opportunity, I think it is an opportunity, because one of the key things, like from yesterday's debate, one of the resource persons actually said when people are confined in their homes, they find solace in works of art. People are reading books, they watch movies, they watch comedy, but what is happening to that artist who can no longer produce? They are really suffering, they have no source of income. And in Kenya, majority of the artists actually do not even have savings that they can live on.
What's the reason for that?
It's because majority, they are small scale, they sell and produce and sell like something for a day. Yeah, it is not, I don't think they have even savings even to last the majority, even a month or two. And most of them, actually, their incomes have been cut off. Because the spaces, like when you look at groups that perform at entertainment spaces, they can no longer do that. All the entertainment public spaces have been closed. It means they have no income. Those people who sell their cultural artifacts, right now they can't sell crafts, because it's not even a priority for people to buy art at the moment. Because looking at our per capita income, art is considered a luxury. But we are still enjoying music at home, on our radio. And I don't know how well our systems, those even the ones that we are listening to and enjoying, how well they are compensated. Because not most of them actually are very aware of copyright in terms of access, benefit sharing. And this COVID-19 can actually be an opportunity for us to reflect on what we need to do to improve our policies. And I wish to call upon most artists. It is the high time we engage in dialogue and this conversation and ensure that we participate in governance to improve cultural governance. Because the government does what it has to do, but sometimes if you don't raise your voice, the government will solve your problems. But if you tell the government these are our issues, those are the things that go to policy. Like looking at now it is an opportunity for us actually to see the gaps in our policies, to see what is it that we need to improve on. And then in terms of creativity, what opportunities are there? I've seen some artists are still continuing to create and to disseminate through e-platforms, the digital platform, so it's an opportunity for them to actually improve what they do. But it is also very sad because majority of our artists do not have access to that digital, to internet. They cannot actually create, they are just shut.
Even right now.
So UNESCO has a very important instrument, that is the recommendation on status of the artist. And this is a time we really need to advocate for policies and legislation on improving the socio-economic status of the artist, using that policy tool. Because the recommendation of status of the artist, what it does, it's a best practice on some of the measures and policies that can be put in place to ensure artists operate in a better environment, because they operate in difficult circumstances. In
fact, one of the issues has been the infrastructure in the country, which has, that's an issue that has come up over the years, the fact of how the infrastructure in the country is not fully supportive of artists, and from things as basic as availability of rehearsal spaces, availability of workspaces, availability of exhibition halls, and that kind of thing. So in terms of policy, the last I checked, there had been the attempt on the film bill, and there had been an attempt on, I forget the other one, but so for the recommendations of the status of the artist, do you think what has been captured in some of the bills that have been sent in is enough, or do you think there's need to set up an entirely new law in regards to welfare of the artists?
For the policies, the national government, that is the Ministry of Culture, Sports and the Arts, and specifically the State Department of Culture and Heritage, is responsible for policies, for national policies, while cultural activities have been devolved to counties. I think the most important is how do we strengthen the link of how the national government and counties work together in civil society to improve on policies. Maybe when these bills that are being prepared by the ministry and policies, it's now an opportunity for us maybe to see the gaps. What can we add that was lacking? But I believe the ministry is doing something. They are working on bills. But Kenya specifically has no law or policy on status of the artist.
Are there countries that have that?
Yes, like Mauritius is working on one. And they have specific measures they have put in place. For example, they have a fund that supports artists, mobility of artists. When an artist has been invited to an international festival, they can apply to the government. And so long as that festival meets a criteria and shows that artists will benefit, the government can actually buy tickets and facilitate these artists. Then there's also need for an arts council, a national arts council. It is very, very important, because one of the key challenges why artists may not be able to participate in governance, you can never talk to government as an individual. And we keep telling artists, organize yourselves. How do they organize themselves when they are living from mouth, they hand to mouth on daily basis. So if we had a National Arts Council, that Arts Council, it would draw from the sectors, and this council would try to strengthen, like from the grassroots, how they can mobilize artists to join in, and this will create a mechanism of how artists dialogue with government. Because every time you keep speaking to government as artists, as is group, sometimes the government doesn't know what to do,
and who is really the real representative.
And so I wish to really call upon artists to advocate, to have this National Arts Council. It is very important. Tanzania has an Arts Council, Nigeria has an Arts Council, most developed countries actually have an Arts Council, and they are the link between themselves and government in terms of policy, in terms of the decisions that are being made. Because right now, like when we look at this 100 million with the sports fund, it is going to be quite a job for the ministry to identify who benefits and who does not benefit. Because we don't have a body that has a registration of all these artists to know who really is vulnerable, who needs. And right now,
who is legitimate,
who's not. We also have like a lot of women creators who are producing crafts, like the Maasai women, the Turkana women. I don't even think they consider themselves as artists. They consider themselves maybe as self-help groups.
That is such a strong point.
Yes, and these are people right now who have no income. We have groups in, like in marginalized urban settings, who may also not be registered with government. How do we reach them? So this Arts Council for me is very, very important. And as much as we are now facing the challenges, let's use these challenges to address future policies. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of anything else that maybe comes out to you in terms of from the discussion yesterday of what are some artists doing to make money at this time? Maybe did anyone talk about that? Like what's happening in some countries?
In fact, what came out from the debate yesterday is that majority of artists are, apart from those that have really made it and whose incomes are streaming. Through online.
Those who already have a system.
They have a system. And in many countries, like what Kijo Ajalik said yesterday, in Africa we don't even own our own systems for actually benefiting from copyright. We depend on others. It is actually on other people's platforms. So it is very even difficult to access our royalties on what has been used out there. So one of the key things that I noted from that debate is that strengthening copyright is very, very important, and how artists benefit. What is it that we can do as a country? Like, do we need to have our own platforms, even at local level? Maybe at regional level, at continental level? So that as Africa, we are able to manage our royalties. And then the other thing that I notice is that most artists across the world right now, they are frustrated. They cannot create because most of the artists, they operate in public space. As much as maybe a few will make money, majority will not when those spaces are closed.
That is so true. And then also there's been the whole idea of anxiety and mental health issues that have come up. Okay, so this is really helpful. Thank you so much for giving us that update and sharing with which is good. It's important that we need to keep in touch the grassroots, the national and the global. So that was very helpful. So in terms of moving forward, what is because you mentioned that Resiliart movement is there's going to be conversations about the arts taking place, so local debates are going to be started. So I might be preempting the question, but has anything been planned yet, or where can artists, people who want to find out more about it, where can they plug into so that they can find out more information maybe as the days come by?
After the launch of the Resiliart debate yesterday, member states of UNESCO, and Kenya is a member state, are expected to start these debates at the local level, at the national level. And as KNATCOM will be working closely with the Ministry of Culture and civil society so that there can be as many debates as possible. We don't want to limit it to one debate. We can have several debates talking about different issues across the sector. And we will be working closely because our role as KNATCOM is to encourage dialogue among all stakeholders. So we will support and work with any stakeholder that thinks we can do together, we can work together to be able to have these debates. And we'll also be working very closely with Nairobi UNESCO Regional Office.
There's another one.
The regional office.
Africa-wide.
The Africa-wide, which is in charge of 13 countries across East Africa. We'll be working with them and then looking at the challenge of internet access amongst most of the people that we are really targeting. Maybe we'd have to think of these debates. How do we engage artists without necessarily telling them we need to do it virtually, where they have to log in because most of them they cannot access. Maybe they don't even have good phones. We will look for a different way as a commission to have as many ways as possible to see how we can engage, and these conversations to go on in the next couple of months until this thing is over. And whatever we'll be able to collect as a commission, and when we work with other partners, we are open to work with all partners in the sector. We'll be able to compile like a policy advice, which we can share with the ministry, and hoping that these issues raised by artists could actually contribute to bettering future policies. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think we've actually just really gotten to fully understand that. And so maybe we can just end by, if you have any final call to action to people, and maybe any words of encouragement or advice or challenge that you'd like to share with creatives.
Yeah, I think it is an encouragement, is that just like what came out from yesterday's debate, art is part and parcel of our life and culture. We can't do away, whether we are locked in our houses. And one time this thing is going to be over and will go on. I encourage you to continue creating, think of innovative. What is it that you can do within that confinement? And then it is also a time to reflect, to see how do we join hands, all of us, to raise our voices so that we have proper policies in terms of creating an enabling environment. Because people ask, what is a policy? Sarah. It's a very complicated issue to the layperson. But what policies are mechanisms of measures. How does our government choose to respond to promotion and protection of arts and culture? What do they put in place? The documents, the interventions. So how can we influence these interventions to be good for the artists and to ensure that they create an enabling environment for artists to create, to be able to create, to imagine. Freedom of expression is very important. Then to create, are there platforms that people can express talents? Then production, how do we disseminate, distribute? How do people access and enjoy what we have? So that as we talk of the software, of what the sector needs, we also talk about the hardware. The hard spaces, we also need spaces that are not necessarily digital. Because if we have no exhibition places, we have no rehearsal spaces, we have no places where these artists express physically. It also becomes very difficult. And a lot of county governments are keen also to support culture and arts. And what we've realized as the National Commission is, I think that there's weak linkage of policies, because counties are not very sure what is it that they ought to be doing. But as artists,
most of them think it's just beauty pageants, and
each county interprets it in a different way. Some of it have cultural festival, like in Western you find a lot of cultural festivals. Others interpret it in different ways, even a beauty pageant. But if we have proper policies, we raise our voice. What is it that we need government to do? Because there's what government should do, and there's what government ought not to be doing. So that the government concentrates on doing what they ought to do, and artists do what they need to do. And what artists need is an enabling environment. And this environment requires measures, interventions. We need like that structure, the Arts Council. We need a fund. How does that culture fund? It's together with sports. How is it implemented to be able to be effective? Those are the kind of discussions we need to have. And I encourage all the artists, you can go to our website, that is the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO. We've put something.
KNATCOM.com or?
No, it is unesco.go.ke or UNESCO Kenya. And you'll find information about this Resiliart movement. And we are encouraging as many artists and art professionals to join us, so that together we can actually improve.
So that we can move somewhere.
Yes.
All right, guys, we were joined by Emily Njeru, and as you can see, she's very, very engaged really with the sector. She's, I know a lot of the time we usually complain, oh, Gava this, Gava that, people are not doing anything, but I can tell you, I've seen for sure that we have people really dedicated and working towards supporting us, our sector. So in terms of the call to action, moving forward, we need to start thinking about making sure that we are properly registered in associations, making sure that we are organized. In terms of plugging into what KNATCOM is doing, you need to go to the UNESCO, to their website, which is unesco.go.ke. So let's keep on having these conversations, and I'm sure we will achieve what we're looking for at the end of the day. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.